In this Torah, and in almost all the Torahs, it starts off with a pasuk. And Rav Nachman starts with the pasuk, and then at the end of the Torah, he comes back to it. And he shows how the whole thing was really, the pasuk has is meramis to the whole inyan that he talks about. You could really see it in basically the main idea. You could see it in the pasuk itself. So it starts off over here. Says Avram. The pasuk is by the Akedah, and it's talking about the Eibishter testing of Avram. And as I said, but at the end of the Torah, we'll basically come back to this pasuk and show how the whole inyan of the Torah really, you could see it in the pasuk itself. Okay, the next little line is Is betukune Zohar. He ties this pasuk into what it says in Tikkunei Zohar, which is Misitra Yimina Moicha Chivarta Kekaspa. From the right side, the brain or the intellect is as white as silver. That's what the Zohar says. So, you guys familiar with the setup of the spheres? Just the three columns, the basic three columns.
Yep.
Yeah. So the right side is what we're talking about is Chesed, and that means the right side is Chachma, Chesed, and those are the two main parts of the right side. Both of those have to do with Chesed. So there's a big connection over here between Avraham and Chesed and the right side of the spheres, which is, we come back to these two things all the way at the end when we talk about everything else. We'll come back to them. The Zohar brings a pasuk Zera Avraham Ohavi. So the Zohar itself ties in Avraham with the right side, with the Chesed. Zera Avraham Ohavi. It's going to say that this has to do with the intellect. We'll get back to it all the way at the end. Okay. So with this, those are like the two beginning parts, and then Rav Nachman starts the Torah. There's two ideas over here. When you look at something, there's a Ora Yosher. There's like this direct light, right? Just take the physical idea of looking, like you're looking at a building, you're looking at a person, you're looking at any physical object. Yeah? So when you first look, if you want to split that into two, there's actually two parts to it. There's the direct looking, that's called Or HaYoshar. And then there's Or Choizer. Or Choizer, we're going to explain, is when you see the object, so it like reflects back to you. And that's how you perceive what you've seen. So we're going to break it into two. These Pashtus Ha'Ra'usu Or HaYoshar. So the actual like going out, the first glance, that's the idea of Or HaYoshar. Then when you want to actually process what you saw, this is the reflected light, it's called Or HaChoizer. So this is just, we're talking about over here like physically seeing something, but it's really just a mashal to really like seeing spiritual things, deep like spiritual concepts. We're going to get back to that later. But in order to understand that, we're using the physical eyesight and the way somebody sees something, we're using that as a mashal in order to better understand how this process works. So in brackets, the way this Torah was written was, it's called Lashon Chaverim, which means it wasn't written by, Rav Nachman didn't like dictate it, and Rav Nosson didn't write it. It was like there were a bunch of manuscripts of different Talmidim and Rabbi Nachman that were put together, and Rav Nosson edited them. So it's not as like precise, and it's not written as well as a regular lesson in Likutey Moharan, but Rav Nosson added comments to explain what's going on. So whenever if you had the text, you'll see there's a bracket, and this is basically Rav Nosson now explaining what was meant by what we just said, because it's very cryptic. So Rav Nosson goes and explains it. He says, Ki ikar koich ha'ra'us, the main power of eyesight, the way it works is that you look at something, like we explained, and the power of the eyesight, of sight, it goes forward, it goes out. The way he says it, like it bangs in to the object that you're trying to perceive. It like crashes into it. And then that original eyesight that you sent out, it actually like turns around, it reflects, and it comes back to you. And the reason why it does it is because it, like we said, it crashed into the object, so it was reflected, and it comes back to you. And then it forms some kind of picture in your eyes. and then your eyes, they see, which means they perceive the type of thing that you're trying to look at. Kavur Heitiv, Rabbi Nachman explains this later in a different lesson, explains this whole idea over here of the eyesight. So now that we've explained the way vision works, right, we understand that there's two components to it. There's the direct looking at something when you want to see something, right? That's more like up to you, so to speak. And then there's like the effect, which is when it crashes and returns, and then you can actually perceive it. That's the idea of the Or Choizer. The hitting it and coming back, that is, it's the idea of the returning or the reflective vision. Okay? So that's the first idea. Rabbi Nachman introduces this idea of looking and how there's two parts to it, and he's going to tie this into ruchnius and growing in spirituality. There's these two components as well. If anybody, I think like in between the paragraphs, somebody wants to ask any questions, then you can like unmute yourself or whatever. If not, then I'll go further. But I think we'll do it like that. That way we can try to keep the flow going. Good? Okay. Hashem Yisbarach Baruch Hu Avshem Nitbas B'Shum Davar Mida. Even though we can't understand Hashem, is this the first time Rabbi Nachman introduces Or Choizer? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I could search it, but I don't know. I'm not sure. It seems like he doesn't, because there's this Torah 13 that they quote over here, and they say that he explains this idea over there. So I'm assuming that in Torah 13 you could find this concept. But there is something to be said that every single lesson in Likutey Moharan has a unique idea, and there are like some real there's some people that learn the Likutey Moharan that are very strict about this, and they don't like to like compare one Torah to a different, because they feel like each Torah has its own unique flavor, and everything was given in individual lessons. It wasn't necessary to look at other ones in order to understand what you're learning. Like everything's like a package, its own package with all the various components in it. So just an interesting thing to know. When you learn a Torah, you don't have to say, oh, it means what the other one says, because it doesn't work that way. Each one is really an individual Torah. So even though we're talking about this idea of vision over here, and that's like a human type of thing, we all have vision. It says Hashem Yisbarach Hu Afshu Einu Nispas B'Shum Nida. Even though we talk about Hashem is incredibly great, and there's no way to describe him in physical terms. But to satisfy our ears, never by Gam Kain, we find this concept also not only by human beings, but we find the same concept, the eyesight, that you split it into these two ideas of the Or Yasher and Or Choizer. We find that it says it regarding Hashem also, because it says Ki Rom Hashem. Hashem is great. He's up high. B'Shafal Yira, and he lowers himself to see, or he sees the lowly. V'Gevoya Memerchak Yeda, and he knows he could see from far. He can see. So you have the two ideas that even though Hashem is great, he's high. V'Shafal Yira, he could see the low from his place. Gevoya Memerchak Yeda, even things that are very far, he knows. So if you split this into two, you have the two ideas. You have that Hashem can see from far, right? That's like us when we want to see something that's far away. That is the Or Yasher. And then you have the Memerchak Yeda, that he knows, the great one, he knows from very far. He knows things from a distance. So knowing, right, is the idea of the light coming back and you being able to process something. Even though something's very far from Hashem is, so to speak, in Shemayim, but he could see something infinitely far and process it. So the two koiches, the Or Yasher and the Or Choizer, when it comes to perfect, obviously, and the two abilities, the looking and then the returning, which is the processing, they're both at maximum at the maximum level. With us, we're going to see that it's different. We have a whole different avoda over here, which is why Rabbi Nachman is explaining this. So Yira says Yasher. So seeing is simply the Or Yasher. Memerchak Yeda, to know from a distance. Or Choizer, that's the processing, when we said like the light bangs and it comes back to you. And now Rabbi Nachman again explains this. You have the parentheses. The main idea of knowing, of understanding what you're seeing. Again, we're giving a physical we're giving a physical example over here of eyesight, but we're going to relate these to spiritual concepts. So the main idea of knowing of what you see and processing it, this idea of the eyesight returning. So he gives an example of this. Imagine sometimes you actually see the thing, right? So that you understand this concept. You see something passing by in front of you very quickly. Like, you know, where this is really true is like magicians, right? Their whole power is really with eyesight. So you see like a magician, you see someone, he does a trick, he passes something across from your eyes very quickly. But still, you didn't know what you saw. It passed by so quickly. If someone asked you, what did you see? You can't even answer them. But you did see it, right? Your eyes actually witnessed it. If someone passes something from your eyes extremely quickly, the reason is, right, we talk about this process where your eyesight goes and bangs and then returns, because the object passed by so quickly, that process wasn't able to develop, and you were not able to process what you saw. So your eyesight is very weak over here. You couldn't collect it in your mind. Another Torah talks about this. So the idea of knowing is the reflective light. Okay, so we've developed these concepts in the physical perspective, where we split eyesight into two, or Hayasher and the Or Chayzer, and we explained a little bit how it works even in the physical sense. Someone goes, right? How many fingers was I holding up? You can't tell because your eyes didn't have the time, your eyesight didn't have time to sort of hit the object and then return, so you can process it. So we can actually split up eyesight. Rabbi Nachman has now proven something we never realized till now, even physically, is that we can split up eyesight into two. There's actual looking part, and then there's the actual processing part, which is there's some type of return we get on our eyesight when we look at things. So it's a fascinating idea, and we've also shown that it applies to Hashem as well for some reason. That's what we've also shown. By the way, just the idea of this is just to learn how to learn a lesson Likutey Moharan together, Torah Likutey Moharan, and we're going to do it today. We'll see how long it takes us today, maybe part of the next time. And then when we go through it, Reb Nosson Likutey Halachos really brings all the ideas home and shows us how they all these concepts really apply in incredible ways. How you see them in the whole Chumash, you see them in the whole Tanakh, you see them in Chazal. You can apply them every single day. But the idea first is just to get the general concepts, and then when you get them, you can actually start to understand the deeper meaning and how to apply them. So it's like a structure that we're setting up, and that's why we're introducing all these different types of concepts that we never thought of before. And for example, splitting up eyesight into two, and they will have. There's a major purpose in all of this, which we'll see as we go on, and especially in Likutey Halachos. Any questions on that so far? How's it going, David? Good? You're okay? I can't hear you, got in your mute, but it's all right. Okay. Okay. We'll go on. Third paragraph. So now in the next concept, right? We're just going to keep on introducing concepts, but we'll go slowly and explain them. The next thing is the idea, anyone who's learned Chassidish Sfarim or Kabbalah, there's always idea of Shefa and Kalim, right? This idea of Shefa, which is like the light, it's the bounty that comes down, and it's great, like a guy that goes and he wins the lottery. It's wonderful. You could win like $100 million, you know. Usually, like, people blow that money like so quickly, and they actually end up in debt more often than not. The reason for that is because if you don't have a keli, you don't have the vessel to hold the bounty, the shefa. What happens is it overflows, and the keli can't hold it, and it kind of cracks and breaks, and you just lose everything. That's what happens, like, even with things like money, and the Maaseh Bereshis was like that. That's why Akash Baruch Hu created the world. Because Akash Baruch Hu created the world like that, that theme like runs throughout Brias Olam, and the whole Kabbalah is always talking about that concept over and over and over again. But everything in the world has that idea like implanted in it, and it's going to be the same thing with re'iyah, with eyesight. If you think of the idea that your eyes, they're like absorbing so much, you look all around, there's so much going on around you. That's all like the shefa. There's like infinite amount of stuff that you can see, right? But in order to process it, it can't overflow. It's got to fit into that keli. Okay? So Rabbi Nachman says, "V'dash yistaklus oisek keli." When you look at something, there's this process over here of building kelim, of building these vessels. Dahainu gevul uzman. In order to really understand what you see, you have to have a gevul. You have to have literally a boundary. I think we translate it as, they use a good word. They call it the word a dimension. Everything's dimensions. With vision, it's always dimensions. So you have to have dimensions, and you have to have time when it comes to eyesight as well. You're gonna see these two concepts, but without dimensions and time, you can't really understand what you've seen. Okay, and this is going to be true in the physical sense, but the purpose of this is to relate it to a spiritual concept. Before you see something, it's without any kind of boundary whatsoever. Like we said, you're like looking all around. You see endless amounts of stuff all around. But when you see something, part of this process makes these dimensions in what you see so that you can process it. So he brings a raya to this. Chazal say, this is talking about the man. When we ate the man, right? It says that Hashem he pained us, he afflicted us, and we were starving, we were hungry. And then he fed us the man. So Chazal learned from this. You can't compare someone who sees what he's eating and to someone that doesn't see what they're eating. They'll never have any satisfaction. You learn from this pasuk that a blind person is never satisfied with what he eats. And Rabbi Nachman says, someone who doesn't see, there's no boundaries, there's no kalim for him. So the explanation of this is that in the midbar, when we were fed the man, right? The man, everybody knows, could taste like whatever you wanted it to taste like. So you would think then, if the man could taste like anything, like that's awesome. And like, why were the Yidden complaining so much about the man? But the Gemara actually teaches us that it wasn't like that, because since it had the same texture, it looked the same. So therefore, no matter what you wanted it to taste like, you were never satisfied with it, because there's a connection over here between seeing something makes some kind of a gevul, it makes some kind of dimensions, it makes some kind of a keli, so that then you could understand it, you could appreciate it. That's the way it works with food. So if like I see something, I understand what it is, now when I eat it, there's a level of satisfaction that I have that I can properly process it. If a person is blind, so then everything they're eating, it's just like that shefa without kelim. They have all this food, but they have no way of really appreciating it. So the Gemara finishes off. What the Gemara says, where do you see this from? The Gemara brings a pasuk to explain this concept. It says that it's good for eyesight is good for moving the soul, which means that like for the soul to find satisfaction, eyesight is beneficiary for it. And that goes along with what we've just explained, that actually seeing something, when you see something, it's able to it has dimensions, which are kalim, and then you can appreciate it. We'll explain this as we go along. That seeing something makes some kind of kalim. Okay? David, is this concept. I just want to clarify, make sure that it's clear. I've got the mute on, so I don't know if you can unmute it. It's okay? The idea is fine? Okay? So we have the idea here, just to summarize, that in order to appreciate anything in life, for example, money was the original example I gave, right? Usually when someone works hard, they understand the value of money and they could really appreciate it, right? So you have shefa, bounty, and then you have kalim, vessels. Rabbi Nachman says the same is true of eyesight. The example he gives is about people that are blind, that the Gemara says they can't appreciate what they're eating, because the eyesight actually has this function that it makes boundaries for things, and it compartmentalizes things. It makes boundaries for things, and therefore the person who's blind, when they eat the food, they can then process it properly and appreciate it. If not, then it's just like it could taste like anything, but they don't understand where it fits in. They can't put it into that keli. They can't classify it, and they have no real appreciation for it. So eyesight has this concept as well. And now we're going to actually start relating, now that we've got these things, right? To summarize, there's two types of looking. There's the Ur Yosher, there's direct light, that's when you look at something, and then there's the Ur Choizer, which is really the main purpose. It's when that light reflects back to you, and then you understand what you've seen. And we're going to relate this to seeing great spiritual things, right? So that's really the main purpose. And another part is that you also, when you look, there's a part of looking that creates these gvulim. It creates dimensions in time. There's part of that looking. Like when you see something today, like with iPhones and stuff, they tag everything, right? So the tags really do that type of thing. They have a time on it, and you can put categories and keywords and tag words and stuff like that. So there's a part of looking that is connected to, that puts things into like a compartment of time and of dimensions, so that your brain can then process what you've seen. Because seeing in itself, the actual ability to see, that's what we're trying to explain. It's just like, raw. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like we said, the example, someone could put something in front of you and move it around so quickly that you don't even know what you saw. So that's not the real purpose of seeing. Seeing, like we say a lot of times, we'll bring proof to this later. Seeing, the purpose is to know something, right? That's really the purpose of seeing something. What you can't believe it until you see it. Yeah, people say that type of stuff. So these are the various parts of seeing in the physical sense. And now we want to say that everything in Ruchnis parallels Gashmis and vice versa. So we want to bring out now that we understand the mashal and the Gashmis, we want to relate this to a Ruchnis type of thing, because it works the same way with seeing concepts, spiritual concepts. We're going to relate all of this. This is actually just a mashal for it, but we give a mashal of bitachon. Okay? The idea of bitachon is like a spiritual eyesight. When you're, right, what do you do when you have bitachon? You like look to Hashem. You look up at Hashem. Your eyes are looking up at the sky. You're trying to find Hashem. You're trying to. It's a form of looking, believe it or not, in a ruchnistic sense. You look only at Hashem, so it's a very focused form of looking. You could look at magazines with business ideas. You can look at mentors. You could look online. You could look here. You could look there. But someone true bitachon, they're completely focused, and their eyesight is only on Hashem, and they know that Hashem is the one who's in charge, and Hashem can help them. And they trust in Him. Right? Rabbi Nachman is going to use this as a proof. David Mel said that eyes they look, so to speak, with hope to Hashem. They hope to Hashem. So this idea of bitachon, that is what makes the boundaries. The Hainu Gevul Uzman, and we split those up into two. There's two forms of boundaries. There's the dimensions and the time. And when you have those two things, you could have kelim. The way it works is that Hashem is constantly sending down to us hashpah. There's bounty constantly coming down. Hashem maintains the whole world. He's constantly sending His bracha down. It's actually here all the time. The reason, believe it or not, that we don't see it is because we don't have the kelim. Since we don't have the kelim, so then we're not able to receive it. But really, if we would have the eyes to see this, we would see that it's constantly, there's this bracha that Hashem is continually sending down to us. The problem is that there's no, when the way Hashem sends it down, there's no constrictions. Everything is just in a very open way, and it's not constricted by time. So sometimes this is the way it works, right? Because there's no time with Hashem. So Hashem sends down the bracha, but we don't receive it for 2 or 3 years. It doesn't come down when we need it. But through looking with bitachon, through looking with bitachon, we make this dimension that we spoke about, that we make it come down when we need it. He's going to explain this in the pasuk. All of everyone's eyes, they look with hope to Hashem. Through doing that, that's the rest of the pasuk, the continuation. So noisin lahemas achon bitoy, and then Hashem gives everyone their food, what they need to eat, biitoy, which is in the proper time. So it's through the einei chali lechis aberu, it's through the bitachon, which is looking to Hashem with hope, that you have the noisin lahemas achon biitoy. Perush b'istal klusei ve'einav l'Hashem yisborach, through looking with your eyes towards Hashem, which means to have bitachon. Through this, Hashem gives everyone what they need in the proper time. Specifically in the proper time, which means at the time that you need it. That the bitachon that you have, that makes these kelim so that you should be able to receive what you need. Okay, so the idea again is Hashem is constantly, continually sending down shefa. There's always shefa coming down all the time. Why don't we see it? Because we have to have a vessel, a keli, in order to makabel the shefa. Okay, so now the way we've explained this was there was these two things. There was the orach hayashar and there was the orach choizer. So the orach hayashar over here is Hashem's bracha being sent down. Hashem's constantly sending the bracha. It's like our eyesight. We're looking, we see the eyes, there's an immediate effect. The eyes just go out and they see everything. But we don't process what we see. We just see everything. Like the example, you move your hand quickly. How many fingers was I holding up? I don't know. It happened too quickly. I need to be able to process that information. So that we said is done through making various these boundaries, so to speak, the gevulim, dimensions and time and these types of things. So the way that works is when you have bitachon, so then you look to Hashem and you need it at a certain time. So then you're able to make these kelim because you're looking to Hashem and you need it at a certain time. And that makes the idea of the kelim over here, so that you should be able then to take that bracha, because the bracha was like everywhere. But now when you look with bitachon, that's the or choizer. It's the or, it's a light that comes back to you. Let me just clarify that point, because it's a very important one. I don't have there's a sefer called Paparois L'Chachma. It's a Perush on Likutey Moharan. Chaim Kramer has it here. It's a very important part of this. Sorry. Here. So he says, the power of vision a person uses to concentrate on the bounty he seeks, for example, food, clothing, shelter, is the aspect of the direct light. Okay, so there's two ways of actually explaining this. So when you're looking directly, the Or Yosher is the power of vision a person uses to concentrate on the bounty that he sees. To say it that way would be over here in Rav Nachman's mashal, that would be over here that the direct light, the Or Yosher, is you looking to Hashem when he infuses his vision with his trust in Hashem, and it impacts, as it were, the desired shefa, it returns to him as reflected light. Yeah, so you by looking at with bitachon, by you looking at with bitachon to the shefa, what happens is that when it then bounces off the shefa and it brings the shefa back to you. That's we're going to explain all this in Likutey Halachos exactly how this works, but the idea right now is just to get the general concepts so that we understand the same way you have in physical eyesight these various parts, you have it in ruchnius also. So you having the bitachon in Hashem, what it does is now you're able to bounce off that shefa, and the shefa comes back down to you. Okay, that's one way that we do it, and the other way is what he says next. Is bechinas milos is covers the tzaddikim. Another way is through the tzaddikim. Ki yesh bechinas tzama nafshi. So what we explained so far was with bitachon. Now that was really only a marshal to what we're going to say next. The next part is the idea of his kavros to tzaddikim and his spiritual bounty. A person says they're very thirsty, right? We know water is always a mashal for Torah. So a person says they're very thirsty. There's also there's a spiritual meaning in this too, that they want more ruchnis. Someone is really thirsty. So someone's like in a desert and there's nothing to drink whatsoever. They'll drink even like dirty water if they have to. Whatever they have to do to spare themselves. So also when it comes to ruchnius with the Eibishter, and there are people, they want ruchnius so badly, they're like always going around thirsty. And they're just constantly looking for quick like boosts, different quick ideas of things that they can do in order to achieve that mayim of Torah, of ruchnius. They'll do whatever they can in order to do that, even if it means drinking what we call dirty water. They're always walking around thirsty. Because naturally, the neshama of a Jew is constantly wanting constantly wanting Hashem. The problem is that it's without these constrictions, these constraints that we spoke about until now. And you see this, sometimes we say, the Gemara says sometimes a person has to not learn, and that's important to keep his learning going. Right? So you see the idea, you can't constantly be learning. There are times where you need to take a break, and that's because you need certain constraints. Like we spoke about with vision, we spoke about with the shefa, that the shefa is not just going to overflow on you and you won't be able to handle it. You have to have betachin. When you have betachin, that means I need it right now and I need it in a certain way, and that makes a certain type of constriction. And so too, when it comes to ruchnius, there's certain types of constrictions that you need also. And there's another pasuk, Eis lasas Hashem hefer teraska. There's a time you have to actually break what it says in the Torah. That's the same idea. But one has true connection to tzaddikim. Those tzaddikim, they teach one how to know when to have these various constrictions, so that you're not always thirsty and drinking the dirty water. My soul thirsts to Hashem, to Kel Chai, to live with Hashem. Yeah.
Maim Ra'im, is that just Torah that you're learning, or ruchnius that you're seeking above the level that you're supposed to be seeking? Or could Ra'im also mean that inherently you're seeking that ruchnius, that you're getting it from places other than Torah? Like Ra'im seems, is it inherently Ra, or is it only Ra because it's more than you should be having at that point?
Most likely it starts off that it's inherently Ra, even though, that it's inherently good, and the problem is that it's not right for you at this time. But like we said, that's one of the major things that we hear, is one of the constraints that we have to have, like if the shefa comes down at the wrong time, it could literally bury you. It's not what you need right now, even though in essence it's a good thing, but right now this is not what you need, and you don't have the kalim for it, so then it breaks the kalim, and you become broken as well. So most likely it starts off that the thing itself is good, okay? And then you're not able to process it, so it breaks you, and then you may very well look to other places to try to fill that satisfaction. And like we've said, the nefesh of a yid, it always wants, and that's the reason for this problem. That's why you see Jews are so much more successful usually than other people, because the nefesh always wants, it's trying to find this shefa, which really is the ruchnius that it's seeking. When it can't satisfy that, so then it'll look to other places to find that fulfillment. The funny thing is that it's actually, like we said, these two psukim, that it's actually a lot of times when you have bittul, you're not learning. That's actually what you need for the kiyum. That's actually what could keep you going. The other, Eis Hashem hefer teraska, you have to actually break the Torah. So the idea is, the funny thing is that it's actually stepping back a lot of times, needing, which you have to define what that means, obviously, and that doesn't mean that you can break the Torah. But there's a certain level over here of stepping back that's actually what you need in order to feel that satisfaction. And because we think we want more all the time, so we end up drinking these waters that are dirty, murky type of waters. So the example of that, for example, like where the Eitzah is over there, it doesn't say it clearly. Only the concepts you see in Likutey Moharan. That's why, like, if you learn Likutey Moharan without the Likutey Halachos, it's very difficult because you can see all the concepts, but you don't necessarily know how to apply them. You get the general idea only. And then Reb Nosson goes and he just writes pages and pages and really explains, the connections and what those concepts are and everything. And that's where it really gets to be amazing. But we had the idea with B'tachin already of having to have the Zman, where you look and by having B'tachin, that's what makes it hit the focus and hit the shefa so that it comes down in the right time. And now you have this and just in general spiritual matters, you have to also have these various restrictions that help you build the kelim of Zman and the two things, the Zman and the boundaries, the other boundaries that you need. But Rabbi Nachman says, this is the advantage of connecting with tzaddikim. They teach you how to do this. In your avodah, they'll hold you by the hand and they'll teach you how do I make up the proper boundaries. We said and that's the idea. It says, so we already explained that I'm thirsty to Hashem. I want Hashem. He's the living God. He's the source of all of chiyus and all my energy and everything. Masi Avai, when will it come? When will it come? So that I'm not like walking around thirsty all the time. So that I'm satisfied. Like the guy is like screaming out, Masi Avai. He wants to know when it will come, so I won't be standing here like begging and wanting and thirsty and running after the wrong things. And then the continuation is and then I'll see the face of Hashem. So seeing the face of Hashem is actually the Pnei Shechina, the way we understand what Hashem looks like. Because how do we understand Hashem? Hashem is so infinitely great. We have a very hard time relating to Hashem. So therefore, the tzaddikim, they're called like the Pnei of Hashem. They're like the face of Hashem because the way we understand what Hashem is only through the tzaddikim that are greater than us and have a better perception of Hashem than us, and they're able to teach that to us. So you have those three parts that everyone's nefesh automatically, it's constantly thirsting for Hashem, it's thirsting for the ruchnius. So Masi Avai, when will it come? Meaning the guy doesn't want to be standing here all the time, like just with his tongue out, just waiting and waiting. He wants to know when it's going to come already, so that he won't be in this constant thirst. And then the way he's able to do that is through seeing the face of Hashem, which is the tzaddikim that explain really the way Hashem works, and they teach us that. So Nachman says that seeing the face of Hashem it's very specific that David Melech chose that word. That we said when you look the proper way, like we said with B'tachin, you're able to make the various boundaries that you need in order to later come to the comprehension of it. You're able to come to the proper comprehension. There's a type of scene that includes the kelim so that you can then comprehend it. It's part of the scene itself. Okay, the next part is really, it's like another 15, 20 minutes to finish off the Torah. I don't want to do it now. I think it's too much already. I think we should save it. Any questions? Yeah? Nothing else? Okay. All right. So that is the beginning of this.
Rabbi Yossi, can you talk about why you chose this Torah to start with, to teach us?
The Torah, first of all, it's not so long. I was hoping to do the whole thing now, but I see that it's a little too long for one lesson. But I really want to get into the Likutey Halachos, so that's the kishka of the Torah. So I needed a lesson that wasn't so long; it was short enough, and it had some very nice pieces of Likutey Halachos to give people the idea of understanding the setup of a Torah Likutey Moharan, and then how you take that and bring the Likutey Halachos into it. And once you get that idea, you can start to understand the whole limud of Breslov. It's like a lot of people, they learn the Svarim, they read a few lines, they become inspired, but they don't really get to the real limud of what's involved. So this lesson it's a nice setup. It has these, again, has the Or Yosher, the Or Choizer. It has the idea, which the purpose is to understand things, and then it has the idea of making kalim, and how that's also part of the eyesight, part of the vision, and then there's just a couple more concepts that we have, and that's the end of it. It's not so many, so it's something you could really grasp. That it was just practical, more than anything else, practical purposes, and because there's a beautiful halacha and Likutey Halachos that really shows now. Like once you get the concepts and then you go to Likutey Halachos, then it's like you understand what we're doing over here. That's really what it boils down to. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Rabbi Yossi.
No problem.
Next week, same time, same place. Bezrat Hashem.